Let's do another one that's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more of a head scratcher to start with, but let's see if we can figure it out. And I have an example of this. I'm going to actually pull my tab up here a little bit so you can see this formula. So let's take a look at what I'm doing here in column I. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar with blood pressures, there's actually different ranges of blood pressure. So hopefully all of you know this. You know, if the blood pressure is greater than 140/90, then you have high blood pressure or hypertension. If your number is less than 120/80, then it's considered normal. And if it's in that range, then we may call it pre-hypertension or borderline hypertension. So anyway, so it can become a fairly complicated formula. So let's first start with, so what we're going to be doing here is what we call if-then statements. So again, start with the equal sign. Type in the word if. You don't have to even get help there. Just type in if. And put in your parentheses. And you see how Excel will walk you through the entire formula here? So the logical test is if, so what we're going to do this baseline systolic pressure. If B2, so B2 is greater than 140, and if you hit the equal sign, do you notice how very subtly Excel went to the next cell, which is basically, so this is the test, this is the value. And the value is going to be a word, not a number. If it was a number, we can just type in the number. But this is going to be a word, and we're going to call it high. Okay? Then put your equal sign, or your comma. And now, you always want to have if, so it's if, then. So if it's greater than 140, it's high. If it's not, then you're going to type in normal. All right, and I have my very simple if-then statement. Okay, pretty easy to do. Now, let's do one that's a little bit more complicated. Let's see if we can deconstruct this formula that I have here just typed into my Word document. So again, if you think about it, we need to know information from multiple cells. We have to make multiple decisions here. To know whether someone has high blood pressure, we would want to know both their systolic pressure and their diastolic pressure. Okay? And so we're considering both of these cells. And what we have here then, we have to use both an or sign and an and sign. And I'll explain to you why. So let's go back here. Let's go back to our cell. And let's deconstruct this. So equals if, and let's look at what we're doing here. The first thing we're going to do is or. The reason for this is we're going to start with the if it's greater than 140/90, because as you know, all it takes is for one of those numbers to be greater than 140 or 90. If either one of them is true, so either or, then it'll meet the condition. So you do or, so Excel knows, okay, I'm doing an or function. And then you start, so D2 greater than 140, and you put a comma, your second logical, which is C2 greater than 90. If that is the case, then we have high blood pressure. We're going to do another if statement. This time, it's an and. Because now if you think about it, for the blood pressure to be considered normal, both the systolic pressure has to be less than 120 and the diastolic pressure has to be less than 80. So we have and now we have our next series. So so we have again D2 less than 120, C2 less than 80. And we do, if that's the case, then we have normal. And what I've done here on the middle ground is I've just kind of used common sense. It's either high or it's low or it's normal. And if it doesn't meet either of those conditions, it must be in the middle. And the middle obviously is that, you know, one of the numbers is between 120 and 140, or one of the numbers is between 80 and 90. But all we have to do, those are the only three options that you can have. So we type in pre, we close our parentheses, and now we have our logical statement for this. And when we hit the enter button, we have our calculation.